Anne has been involved with a case of mine. It's probably one of the worst cases I ever had. It's probably a good case study, it could be. And she was the saving grace in this case for me with family reunification after someone has been alienated. And there were some other issues going on in the case. There was personality disorders. There was many different factors of this. And Anne was able to sort that out and piece it together and be tremendously effective in the lives of this family and in one child who really has my heartstrings. So Dr. Appel she came up here from Austin. Her office is down in Austin. And she has a brand new program that she's going to talk with us about, and it's the intensive family reunification. And once people have been alienated and the family's been broken and the legal system maybe has contributed to that, what do we do now? Where do we leave them? Do we just say, hey, you're divorced, bye-bye, see you when the modification comes up? Or do we put them in the hands of someone like Dr. Appel? And I think if her papers are going to be passed out right now, she's got a PowerPoint, and we're going to share that with you. And so I think that you're really going to get a lot out of Dr. Appel's presentation, and then after that, Dr. Appel and Tammy and Kelly are going to interact, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions then. So please welcome Anne Appel.
Invited me to come to one of the trainings, and I just can't tell you how intense this was. And so they did their little brain lecture, kind of what Tammy just did, and we sat in a room, and then we went out to the horses, and when it was my turn, I went in, and it took me all of 5 seconds to just start bawling. I'm such a terrible parent. I don't pay enough attention to my son. That's the one I'm like, what? How did this happen?
Like, where does that come from?
Where does it come from? I mean, and we were at a training. This wasn't even my therapy session. But I just got to tell you how powerful it is in intervention.
It is. And sometimes too much, too soon.
It was too much too soon. So I'm going to try to, I want to try to give us a little bit more time than 15 minutes. So I'm going to try really hard to make it quick.
I was trying to do that too, and I didn't. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly, and I might skip a couple slides, and if I have time, I'll go back to them. These are the 4 points that I'm going to try to go through. Assessing the severity of dysfunction. I call it severity of dysfunction because I'm coming from a really family systems oriented approach, so I'm not really using the word alienation, but if you think back to Dr. Baker's presentation, she gave excellent description of most of the things that I'm talking about. We use slightly different jargon, but we're talking about the same things. I'm going to talk about some of the interventions for court-involved families depending on the severity, once you know how severe it is. And Dr. Baker talked about the more complex kind of therapeutic issues when you're assessing. The assessment that I use just for the purpose of screening people for my program is very simple, but it's, when Dr. Baker said, don't listen to the words, look at the behavior, my assessment is very, my initial assessment is very behavioral observations. I'm going to tell you a little bit about overcoming barriers. This magical conference that we went to in 2015, Tammy and I went to Allison Jones too, and that's a great model. But I was led down a different path to the overcoming barriers, and I'll tell you a little bit about that, which I base my approach heavily on the overcoming barriers approach. My approach is for moderate or moderate to severe families. So some of the stuff that Dr. Baker was talking about, these pure alienation cases, I call them severe cases, they're not going to be appropriate for my program. It's going to be more of is it hybrid alienation? Is that what you called it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's going to be more like the hybrid alienation where they're not so set in stone. They could, with some intervention, have some insight and maybe make some changes. Okay, so here's my jargon. Actually, instead of rejected parent, I call them resisted parent. It's the same thing. And favored parent. Okay, so assessment of severity, mild, moderate, and severe. So these are the three just kind of really simple behavioral observations that you can make as attorneys to kind of give you just a rough initial impression of how severe your case is going to be. Consistency and frequency of contact between child and the resisted parent. All of the family members' compliance with treatment recommendations, and all of the family members' compliance with parenting plan and court orders. So mild dysfunction is the ones that we love to get in our office for therapy because the family therapy and individual therapy and co-parenting counseling, everybody looks good and then they're on their way. I don't really ever get cases like that. If you have some, I would love to. So minor interruptions in parent-child contact. So they're following the visitation schedule with minor interruptions. The family is being compliant with therapy recommendations and educational recommendations. They're complying with their court orders. And for these people, like I said, co-parent coaching, family therapy, group therapy for kids. I have an adolescent high school group for divorce families, and the kids really like the group, and they tend to get more out of the group than family therapy and individual therapy, so I highly recommend. I'm not sure, do you guys, Tammy or Dr. Baker, do you know of any other people that do groups like that?
I haven't done
Not
group.
right
I-
now.
Yeah.
Not lately.
I don't either, but I didn't want to just plug my own group, so
Yeah.
I wanted to throw in more. But honestly, there isn't.
So you're the one? Is that what you're
One.
Why she's here.
I love doing this group. This group is honestly, with the exception of my intervention, this is my favorite hour and a half of the week. Okay, so these are the ones that, these are the families that I feel like are going to get, the most out of an intervention like mine. So the visitation schedule is more disruptive than with the mild. They attend treatment sporadically. There's not much success with therapy. But they'll say, oh, we've been going to therapy. Well, how often have you been going?
Or they haven't been in
Once
8
every
months.
6 weeks, and yeah. So inconsistent compliance with parenting plan, treatment, and court orders. Now, so before I get to the moderate intervention, let me talk about what I call severe dysfunction, which is what I think Tammy, Dr. Baker would call pure alienation. Not going to be appropriate for my intervention. They're going to probably, if I miss it, if I don't do as comprehensive of assessment as Dr. Baker and I miss it and I let them in, they're going to completely sabotage and undermine the whole thing, that alienating parent. But just for an initial screener, the child and the resisted parent have had no contact in at least 1 year. And the favored parent and or child have refused to participate in therapy completely. And favored parent shows chronic non-compliance with treatment recommendations, parenting plans, and court orders. So this is a simplistic, just initial screener for these people, but it's something that you can keep in your mind when they're coming into your office, when you're trying to decide, where to go in terms of treatment recommendations. Okay, so Dr. Baker, you probably have more knowledge about the interventions for severe families. I just picked a couple that I was familiar with. Transitioning families. Rebecca Bailey, she has this beautiful property in Sonoma, and this is like the luxury thing, like they do horses, they have a chef, but this is one of those where the resistant parent and the kids go without the favored parent. And I believe that's the case for Family Bridges as well, Richard Warshaw. Are you guys familiar with that? And I know that there's more, I'm just not really familiar with them. So limitations of these, they tend to be even more expensive than mine, $30,000 to $40,000. You have to have a court order. You have to have a court order for mine too, but sometimes custody reversal. Now, people don't like it when I say this. This isn't very popular, but my kind of self-righteous academic self likes to point out that there are no reliable or valid outcome program evaluations. There are some program evaluations of these programs, but there's just not enough to really assess the reliability or the validity. And there is no consensus in the mental health community. There are different camps of people that have very, very strong opinions about how to treat, assess, and determine prognosis for severe families. The only thing I can say about that is to just keep that in the back of your head, and when you hear a mental health professional say that there is I had somebody tell me the other day that this program has 100% success. And this is best practices, and there is 100% consensus. That's just not true. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's just in its infancy, and we just don't have enough science to really make strong predictions about that. Okay, so while Tammy was getting excited about Allison Jones, and I thought that was good, I went to the training at the AFCC conference on Overcoming Barriers Family Camp. It's now let me just tell you, I say it's a great thing, but they haven't had one in 3 years now. And I don't know the next time they're gonna have one. They have it once a year, and they didn't even have it last year. So I don't even know if it's available anymore. But I did go, I did what they called an immersion training. I went to the camp for the 5 days, and I was basically allowed to go into any activity or session or intervention that I wanted to. And it was really intense and it was really exhausting, but when I got done with it, I decided that I was going to come back and make my own version of it. And that's kind of their goal, is to get people, professionals to come get trained and then come and get their own version of what they want to do with this. So there are some Overcoming Barriers professionals, and there's a few in San Francisco, there's some in Phoenix, there's some in Ohio that do kind of similar things that what I do, but they kind of just wanted us to customize our own thing to the community that we live in. So here it is. So I have a single family. At Overcoming Barriers, they had 6 families all together, which made it really interesting, but there is no way that I have that kind of infrastructure. It was absolutely incredible to see how they organized all this. So we're just doing a single family at a time. We're doing co-parenting counseling and family therapy. This is a 2-day weekend intensive. We do co-parenting counseling and family therapy. The entire immediate family is there. They're all together, eating breakfast together, mom and dad, eating lunch together, and they're on the ropes course together. low and high ropes. So, you know, it just, you can imagine, or maybe you don't want to, some of your clients trying to do a team building exercise on the top of that tower. So, but, and we find that putting that experiential part in it allows us to get some movement in the co-parenting counseling and the family therapy, because by itself, talk therapy doesn't do it. You have to have something that really shifts them, like horses do. They don't have horses there. Okay, so here are the 4 parts of my intensive. Apply, pre-intervention. A lot of stuff gets done pre-intervention. A lot of stuff, because it requires a lot of organization and structure. And it requires getting a team together, getting a team for the actual intensive, and getting a team together for aftercare. It's a 2-day intervention, so we're not going to solve everybody's problems. So the aftercare component is critical, and I am organizing a team of aftercare people before we even go out to the intervention, because we want those people in their aftercare therapist's office the week after we come back to keep the momentum going. Because if we just say in the court order, you have to go to family therapy with Dr. Baker, how long does that take before they actually walk in? So this is very structured. You come into the intensive, you finish it, and there's an appointment for you within 2 or 3 days with the aftercare people. Okay, so the court order is very important. Some people want to do just a court order for the intake first, and just keep the. I had a judge order the intake for a family by itself, and she was not going to order the intervention until she heard from me about how the intake went. Or you know, some people do it all together. And the reason that I have the hourly fee during the intake, pre-intervention is what I mean by intake, is that they might not end up doing it, and so I don't want them to, you know, put down $15,000 when they may not even be doing it. Here's my little rationale for why it's $15,000. It's really, the main cost of this is the staff cost, because there's 4 of us, and there's 4 experienced, licensed mental health professionals that are willing and able to work with these kind of people, that are there for the entire weekend. Very little breaks, it's intense. So that costs a lot of money. And we have to have that many because these people are so chaotic and volatile, and a lot of times you have to take one aside, go for a walk, you know, while they calm down. And when you have these 2 parents who really haven't been in the same room together for quite some time other than the courtroom, it's really too much for one therapist to contain them. And it's much better contained, and they can do much more work if there's 2 therapists in there. The kids are separated, so there needs to be somebody with them too. During the family therapy session, with the entire family, there's 4 therapists in the room, so sometimes it's literally 1 therapist for each family member. But it really is necessary because of how chaotic they are. This is an application screener, and I think that the one that most fits kind of the alienation or the alienating parent is the untreated mental illness. Alienating parent, a pure alienation, that parent, it's untreated mental illness for sure. So if we see that, that we know that's not going to be an appropriate family. So moderate to severe dysfunction, sometimes, you know, this is the problem is that, and this is where a more thorough assessment might need to come in, because you really want to make sure that you don't let one of those alienating parents in that's clearly not going to get anything out of it and will probably ruin it for the kids too. So they will get alternative treatment recommendations, probably, you know, the two programs that I listed, and if somebody else has some that I don't know about, I could add that into. But I can't make a strong opinion about which one's the best, because I don't know, and I don't really think any of us know yet, because there's just not enough science behind it. Custody, visitation, and access recommendations can't be given. That's not what we're doing. All I'm doing in the intake is trying to decide if they're a good fit for our program. So in the pre-intervention, I'm doing an interview with, and within this program, I give myself more leeway to, like, I'll interview the priest that's involved with the family, or, you know, all of the extended family members, you know, and I normally don't necessarily do that when I'm just the therapist. But for this, I talk to everybody and find out what's going on. Meeting with the attorneys to develop and clarify the agreement for the intervention and for the aftercare. And consulting with all the professionals that have been involved, and usually with this family, as you all know, there's a lot of professionals by the time they get to me to talk to. And then, you know, just talking to the parents and getting their buy-in, you know, what do you want to get from this intervention, even if some of them are, you know, not as productive as others. Like, I just want him to realize that he needs to leave my kids alone. No, that's not an appropriate agreement, but just kind of directing them to something productive. The place that we do that is called the M5 Ranch. It is a corporate retreat. They have 6 houses that are on this really nice property. It's right on Lake Buchanan. And then they have ropes course, and they have a bunch of, you know, other experiential activities, and mostly designed for originally for large corporate retreats, for team building. They recently got involved with the Wounded Warriors. They do Wounded Warriors stuff now. And then for some reason, they got interested in what we were doing, and they decided to let us on the property, even though we're just, you know, 10 people maybe, and come for a weekend. So that's really nice, because I'm not really sure how we got this. I think Mary Fogel, when she was helping me with this, she called around. But I'm really, really excited about working with them, because it's just such a great outdoor area, and I think it's really important. The parents have to drive an hour, you have to drive an hour out of town, and so it just gives them a little bit more of a sense of, okay, we're going to get away from our usual stuff and go here and do some work. This is a couple of pictures of, that's the house that we use. And we use it because it has 2 living areas, because we keep the kids and the parents separated for a lot of the time. So the kids are in one of the living areas, and the parents are in the other living area. And you can see it's an A-frame house, so they have a bunch of bedrooms that are private. We stay overnight, the parents don't. There's too much liability with that, but it's nice for us. Okay. So, it's usually a Saturday and Sunday. Day 1, the parents do a lot of co-parenting counseling, just kind of getting some insight into how, you know, all of their conflict has affected their kids, and they really need to make a commitment to work on their co-parenting relationship for the sake of their kids. You know, like I said, it's 2 days, so we're just trying to get them unstuck and motivated to go into aftercare. So we're really just kind of getting them to go, oh, okay, this is important. And as you know, a lot of them do not think it's important. When they come into your office, they think it's important to have the least amount of contact with the other co-parent as possible. So this is definitely trying to get them to have a shift. But if they can acknowledge that it's important and it hurts the kids to keep fighting, then I consider that a success for the intervention. I mean, genuinely. Not like what Dr. Baker was talking about, where the favored parents, oh, I want to encourage a relationship with that other parent. No, it was something a little genuine, not just fake a good impression of someone who cares. Just internalize it a little bit. And then the children get a chance separately to process their feelings about the divorce, and we're really working on trying to get them to be appropriately assertive. So not nasty, hateful, spewing out stuff to that resisted parent, but, how can you just in a healthy way ask your dad, for this thing, or tell him how it feels when he does this, without running away or breaking stuff or calling him a bunch of names and accusing him of a bunch of things, filing a fake CPS report, whatever. And then the entire family participates. They start with the low ropes, they warm them up, but it's still pretty intense, because they go out to the ropes course, and the facilitator there, even though he is not a family therapist and is not a mental health professional, he's just really amazing. He just has this intuitive sense about these families, and he'll do the low ropes where there's symbolism, and he'll come up with the whole symbolism and message for the family based on the dysfunctional patterns that I've told him about. It's really great. And he's just part of the package there. And it allows us to kind of step back, take a break, observe. There's the high ropes. Well, I think that one with the walls are low ropes, but they are, and he'll pick one for where they're at. I tell him, this mom is really fragile. I don't know that she can do this. Can you give her something that's on the ground? That kind of thing. So in the second day, we've kind of prepped kids and prepped parents to kind of have a family session. We might have a family session with all 4 or 5 of them, and we might split off, like if there's a lot of conflict between a daughter and a dad, we'll let them have some one-on-ones. But one thing we've learned is that if you spend the entire time with that resisted parent having to sit and listen to his kids tell him how awful he is, that's not really going to be very beneficial. So we try to set it up where it's mom and dad talking to the kids. It's not just dad's problem, it's not just mom's problem, it's the family problem. And like I said, there's 4 therapists in the room, because you never know how that's going to go. And then after the kids leave, we have the parents make sure they really heard them, really understood what they were saying, really heard the feedback that they were getting from them, and figure out a way to appropriately respond. Again, this is 2-day intervention. I'm going to do a lot of helping. Why don't you say this? Why don't you say that kind of thing? Because we don't have time for them in the 2-day intervention to come up with it on their own. If they can, that's great. But I'm much more directive than I would be in the therapy office when we had more time. So then they go to the high ropes. At the very end, and this is kind of the goal of the whole thing, we want the parents genuinely to make a commitment to the kids that they work on the co-parenting relationship, and each one of them needs to say, I want to encourage you guys to have a relationship with the other parent. If they can say it and they mean it, If they don't mean it, then I'm not gonna have them say it. So, this is what I absolutely must have in the court order, is the family therapy for a minimum of 6 months and co-parenting coaching for a minimum of 6 months. If you could make it longer, that would be great, but I'm just starting with 6 months, so it's a little bit more palatable to everybody. One thing that I'm gonna be doing now, I was doing this informally, but now I'm formally wanting it in a court order, that I'm gonna be a case consultant, not a guardian, I don't have any authority, but I can make sure that the team is communicating and I can report to the court, any, the compliance or non-compliance of the family. And let the family gets really attached to us, really, really attached to us, because it's a very intense situation. So we found that even though they were in with a family therapist and a co-parenting coach, every time there was a crisis, they would call me and say, can you please help me? So that's why I kind of included this case consultant in there, so I can kind of be that person as a resource to manage if a crisis comes up and make sure everybody's on the same page. Okay. Oh my gosh.
Okay, we've got lots of questions.
Well, you guys come to